Hey guys, my name's Derek. I'm the founder of ProfitKit.com.au. Now, our website was built in the visions and the goals to help businesses and entrepreneurs to help them be successful and get through the challenges of running businesses. But I've written this article. It's very, very broad and it's targeted for everyone. So hopefully you get something out of it. It's a topic that just means so much to me because I've faced the issue my whole life. So I've I've done a lot of research, I've gotten professional help, and I've just put it in a way that I guess I understood it. So I hope that I can lay it out in a way that you understand. It's if you get one thing out of it, I guess I've essentially done my job. So to start with, I guess I'll just run through the article. It's tailored for the video is really for people who are more visually inclined. The article's there at our website. If you go to profitkit.com.au, you come to articles, health and wellbeing, and then we've got stress management. So you can just select that and have a read of it at any time that you like. So to start with, we need to kind of understand stress. So we've got the basic definition here. So stress can be defined as the physical and mental changes we experience as a result of the demands placed on us in our day-to-day lives. It can be caused by a single element or bound together by many small fragments. Stress can be difficult to identify and often only recognize when it is too late. So you can have what I mentioned there was you can have one single element that causes stress. It could be the traumatic event in your life, it could be anything, or it can be micro stresses. So these are just little parcels of stress that in themselves don't really equate to anything. But when you have 50 of these micro stresses brought together, then that can cause large amounts of stress, the same as, a single event. So it might be a notification or your boss at work or, someone abusing you on the road, your partner having a disagreement. Like it's all these little things that in themselves might be manageable, but when they're all bound together, could be over the course of a day, could be the course of a week, or it could be the course of a year, for example. So you just got to be a little bit careful, but that's starting with a basic definition of stress, just so everyone knows what we're talking about. So second point is I've gone on to measuring stress in the stress scale. I feel like it's important just to touch on. And what I've mentioned here is that you've got to find your optimum amount of stress. So we often peak perform by being under a certain amount of stress, whether it's being in an athletic event or whether it's being your peak performance at work. If you've got no level of stress, we often become lazy. I know in my business, for example, I've had a lot of money that at any one time that was just sitting in the bank, and I wasn't really driven at all to be successful because it was like, well, I've got money in the bank, it doesn't really matter. And as a result of that, you get lazy and you don't perform. I wasn't stressed financially because we had the money there, but I then didn't perform at all and was lazy. So on the other hand, if there was less in the bank and I was thinking about, okay, well, we've got these bills coming up, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'm going to be under a little bit of stress, but I'm also going to perform at my optimum level. So on the other side of the scale is you've got extreme levels of stress. So anything between 8 and 10 is something that you definitely want to avoid. So that's when you're talking about having a breakdown or ending up in hospital. And very, very dangerous, it can lead to suicides and all sorts of nasty stuff we definitely want to avoid. So I just want to highlight, there's just some images so you can see, number one is being essentially just having no motivation. And you'll see that in number two as well. It's getting a little bit more energy, getting outside, but still no motivation. And then we're going into the gym where, attending athletic events. I'm using physical stuff here, but it definitely relates to the workforce as well. This is getting a bit more stress. So a guy running a marathon's putting a little bit, more strain on the body. But then it's getting to a point where, anything above this is when you end up getting in the dangerous sort of categories of being, too burnt out, and then we end up in hospital, which we don't want. So now that you kind of understand stress and the stress scale, we're now going to explain the stress analogy that I've got. So I guess the best way that I understood it was through this thing called the stress bucket. Now I've got a diagram below that I'll go through, but I'll kind of just explain it as we're going as well. So I'll refer up and down to the diagram and then the notes. So if you just imagine a bucket, so actually you don't have to imagine it, I'll show you the diagram. So you imagine a bucket that's got a tap on and water's flowing into the bucket. So I look at the size of the bucket as being your stress capacity. So that's nothing that you can control. It just varies from person to person. So you'll often know that you might have friends or family, some people that can just deal with stress better than others. They're just more relaxed and they don't get fazed by stuff. Whereas, in my case, I'm very, very much a stressed person. Certain things I take to heart a lot more than what other people are. So my stress capacity might be a little bit less, but that is not something I've got control over. So you can argue against it, but you've sort of got to wait until I go through it all, and you'll be able to make sense of it a bit more. But the stress capacity is pretty much out of our control. Some people can handle more stress than others, and that's pretty much all the point I'm trying to make. So that's pretty much what we talked about there, is just the stress capacity. Then we look at the flow of water, and that represents stress factors. So these are things that, come into our lives depending on the category. So we've got life situations that happen that just result in stress, like moving house or having a baby, starting a new job. Self-imposed factors, we've got negative attitudes, drugs, consumption of drugs or whatever that might be. We've got families, friends, and relationships. So they can be external factors that just cause stress in our lives. Work, we've got financial stresses, we've got environmental stresses. So a perfect example of that is COVID. That's environmental and health, but they're just matters that are out of our control that just happened, and they've caused stress in millions of people's lives as a result of it. So the stress factors represent the flow of water into our lives. So the amount of stress you have depends on, the amount of stress you have of those various factors. So that's going to dictate how fast the flow of water is, depending on how many stress factors you have in your life at any one time. So then the next point we go on to is then all right, then what can we do to manage the stress? So there's two things we can basically do from the diagram. One is we can turn the tap down, so we can eliminate stress factors within our lives. So that's going to, it depends on the category and what type of stress as to how you're going to do it. So, if you've got family and friend relationships and stress that are being caused, and you've got to deal with that situation different to what you would from, environmental stresses or financial stresses. So you've really got to identify, I think it's a good exercise to sit down and go, all right, well, what are the things that are stressing me out, and putting them into a category, and then just looking at them individually and dealing with them in the best way you can. For example, if you've got health, if health is an issue, then you've got to deal with that. You've got to get healthier. If finances are a problem, maybe you're spending too much money, or you need to just be more organized. You've got to put a budget in place. Work's a problem, then you might quit your job. So you can turn the tap down by dealing with individual stresses in those particular categories. Now, the other thing is developing your resilience to stress and reducing stressors, as we say. So if you refer to the bucket below, we've got improving stress resilience, and what that does is basically puts holes in your bucket, so that allows water to flow out. So in the example above, the stress factors may be exactly the same, but we've improved our resilience to stress, or being able to deal with it. We haven't improved our capacity, we've dealt with our resilience to be able to handle more stress, essentially. So that just means the better we are and the more resilient we are of dealing with stress, the more holes we get and the more water can flow out to stop our optimum, our stress bucket, I guess, increasing too much on the stress scale. So we've got physical stresses and we've got psychological stresses. So these are ways of improving your resilience on those two categories. So physical stresses is relatively self-explanatory. We can improve our sleep quality, we can improve our nutrition, hydration improvements, being active, managing life and self-imposed factors. So, if you've got, for example, if you're using drugs or you're drinking too much coffee or whatever it might be, then you just got to deal with that. This one's improving routine and balance in your life. I feel like the body, certain parts of your brain go into autopilot when you develop a routine. So it's better to be able to have that routine and balance in your life, because you essentially go into autopilot and you don't have to think about doing a particular thing. So the more routine we can create, the less stress we will have in our lives, or the more resilience you'll have. We've got psychological stresses. So that's just you mentally dealing with your stress. So we've got here, switch off and let go, taking responsibility, talking to someone. So if you come to our article, we've got various resources. So don't ever be alone. Creating a prioritized to-do list. So I've talked about doing that. In my case, it's just a matter of just putting everything out on paper. So just write everything down in terms of your workload, and then categorize it all. So put an A, B, and C behind everything in your list and try and categorize it based on how urgent and important it is. And then once you've got the letters behind each of your tasks, you can then categorize them. So put all your A items obviously at the top, your B items next, your C next, and then your D items, the things that you can delegate on to someone else. So then obviously dealing with your most important things first, and then, you might plan them into your diary and getting them done. But I guarantee you, as soon as you map everything out and you get it organized, you'll feel more in control of your situation, and you'll be less stressed as a result. Plan and prevention. Stay relaxed. So, you might do some meditation, laugh and smile as much as possible. Manage perfectionism. So realize that you're never going to be perfect. And that's one thing I've had to accept. I spoke to a business mentor, and he pretty much just said to me, you've just got to accept the fact that you're never ever going to be in front. That's just the way of life now. So just accept that. And once you accept it, it's easier to deal with. You can never please everyone. You're going to have customers that are never, not always going to be happy, and that's just the way of life. The last point is planning something exciting to look forward to. So one thing that I've done, it could be your weekends, every week you might just say, well, on the weekend I'm going to do this. One thing that I do as part of a daily ritual, or at least I've done in the past, is I used to write down on a bit of paper what I would look forward to in that day. So it could be something simple like I'm going to have lunch with a friend or with my mum, or I've got a client that's coming in that I'm really looking forward to seeing, or I can't wait to get home at the end of the day to cuddle my daughter or kiss my wife or whatever that might be. So having something to look forward to is really important. The next way we can kind of do that is an example that I done was just I bought an annual calendar and put it up on the wall in my office. I then looked at how many leave days that I had along with the public holidays, and I strategically blocked out all my holidays for the full year to use up essentially all of my annual leave. And then it becomes very visual, like those days are then highlighted in yellow on the calendar, so I can then look at those. And then from that point, you can potentially book some trips in advance. So if you've got a 1 week window where you're obviously planning on going overseas or doing something specific, then I would then just go ahead, assuming you can afford it, it's just book it in advance, because once it's booked, there's no turning back. And then you've got that thing to then ultimately look forward to that just gets you excited every day. It just makes the micro stresses that you're having in your day all kind of worthwhile, because all right, well, in 1 month I'm going overseas and I'm not going to be doing anything about, anything work related at all. So it allows you to kind of tolerate the small amounts of stress, because you just got that exciting thing to look forward to and obviously being more happy. So in a nutshell, that's basically it. I hope you've sort of understood the analogy, but the ultimate goal is that we want to have a balance between reducing the stress factors in our life, so getting that tap dialed down so that the water's only flowing in at a relatively low pace. We want to improve our stress resilience so that we can, the water's going to keep flowing in, but as long as we've got enough resilience, it'll just keep trickling out. And we want to maintain our optimum amount of stress level so that we can, peak perform. And the key is we don't want the bucket filling up beyond that point. So once it starts getting up, beyond a 5, we've then got to come back to this and say, all right, well, what do I need to do? Do I need to reduce stresses in my life, or can I reduce more? Or do I need to take more self-care? Do I need to improve my stress resilience in other ways? You might stop meditating, or you might not be getting enough sleep, or your diet might be poor. So there's certain things that you can do, I think, to manage your stress overall. But hopefully that helps you kind of understand a little bit. Definitely seek professional help if you're dealing with high amounts of stress. There's some tools on our site. I'm certainly not a psychologist or anything like that. I'm not qualified to be dealing with it, so please just use it as a guide. I hope I've just given you a little bit of inspiration on to understanding it, but you should definitely seek some professional help if you're struggling mentally. And again, if you come to our website, we've got the tools and resources there to find the necessary links available. So I hope that helped. Please like and subscribe our channel, and comments below if you'd like to know anything more about our site in general. But again, it's just a topic that I was passionate about, and I'd written an article on it quite a while ago, so I just wanted to go ahead and talk about it some more. So thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed, and check out our future videos. Bye, guys.